Hi everyone! Today I'll be explaining how I found the perfect 5-word set for Wordle speedrunning. Pokecheese already made a video explaining what this means and why it isn't practical, but you don't need to have seen that to understand this. One disclaimer before I start, this only works with the list of answers that is used on the sites Hello Wordle and Speedle. This list is shorter than the list used in the original game, and a perfect set like this does not exist for the list of words used in the original game. Before we talk about finding the best 5-word set, we need to talk about what makes it the best. The way we evaluate word sets for Wordle is what's called their ambiguity. This is the number of words that cannot be uniquely identified by looking at the way the letters are colored when all of the words in the set are submitted as answers. The word in the example here could either be shake or shave, so these would both add to the ambiguity. Obviously, a lower ambiguity is better. In total, this set has an ambiguity of 38, which is the lowest known for any 4-word set. What makes the set bunt, flock, hamal, porgy, and swive so special is that it has an ambiguity of 0, meaning you can always know the answer after guessing those 5 words. In order to think about how to find a good 5-word set, it is helpful to think about how the best sets of 1 through 4 words were found. Those sets are Carl for 1 word, Saunce, Lyart for 2 words, Clone, Sprad, and Mite for 3 words, and Churl, Palm, Swift, and Gandy for 4 words. Ideally, it would be possible to test every set of 1 to 4 words to find the best ones, but this is not always computationally feasible. For 1 word, there are only 13,000 or so possibilities, so it is easy to test all of them to find the one with the lowest ambiguity. For 2 words, there are a little over 5 million pairs of words with all unique letters, which can be checked in a few hours. There are other pairs possible, but they are not the best for ambiguity since adding new letters is much more valuable than adding new locations of existing letters. For 3 words, there are over 138 million sets, which have not all been checked, although it could be done with a few days of computation. Empirically, there are letters which are far better to include, so the less useful letters like Q and V are typically ignored for searches. For 4 words, there are fewer sets to check, but it is less obvious that having 20 distinct letters is the way to go. For example, adding a W to the set isn't as valuable as adding an N. However, it is still expected that the best set has 20 distinct letters. Knowing what the best sets look like for fewer words, how can we create a good set of 5 words? There were initially 2 competing ideas. The first was to find a set of 5 words which has all distinct letters like the best-known sets for fewer words. Unfortunately, only 11 sets exist compared to the 25 million for 4 words, which doesn't allow for very good letter placement. My code can find all of them in a few minutes, and you can see that trying to include the most difficult letters with so few vowels forces certain words to appear often. The best possible ambiguity for a set of this form is 28, not much better than the best 4-word set. The other competing idea was to add a 5th word to an existing 4-word set. The best-known 4-word set is Churl, Palm, Swift, and Gandy, and the best word to add on to this is veal, which reduces the ambiguity from 38 to 6. Speedrunner Gaster was able to construct an even better 5-word set using a slightly worse 4-word set, and adding the word kevel. Kevel is a good addition since it includes a K and a V, as well as additional instances of E, the most common letter. Both of these sets are unable to distinguish similar sets of words, which are especially hard to separate. Looking at pairs like organ and argon or gauze and gauge turns out to be the key to finding better 5-word sets. Consider the words organ and argon. For a word set to distinguish these 2 words, it has to have either an A or an O in either the first or 4th position of a word. For another example, to distinguish chili and chill, either an I or an L at the end of a word is needed. We can construct a list of difficult pairs, which are all pairs of words that have the same set of letters when J, Q, X, and Z are removed. For example, the words argon, groan, and organ make 3 difficult pairs, as they are all anagrams of each other. Gauze and gauge both contain the letters A, E, G, and U when the Z is ignored. Eater, extra, terra, and treat all contain A, E, R, and T, with a variety of extra letters. In order to find a 0 ambiguity 5-word set, all we need to do is place letters in locations that cover every difficult pair, and include all of the letters except for the 4 least common. Non-difficult pairs are distinguished based on the sets of letters they contain, and difficult pairs are distinguished based on the specific placements. But how do we actually place letters to distinguish every difficult pair and include all but a few letters? Here is where the satisfiability problem, a classic problem in computer science, comes to the rescue.
The satisfiability problem, typically abbreviated as SAT, is a very general problem in computer science and is typically formulated in the following way. There are variables, each of which can either be true or false. There are also clauses which are the conjunction of variables and their negations. A clause is satisfied if any of its components is true. For example, The clause x1 or not x2 or x3 is satisfied if either x1 is true, x2 is false, or x3 is true. The goal of the problem is to find values for the variables such that every single clause is satisfied. For example, we could satisfy this problem by setting x1 and x2 to true, and x3 to false. If we were to add another clause forcing x1 to be false, then our problem would become unsatisfiable. SAT is so well studied because most other problems in computer science can be converted into satisfiability problems. However, SAT is NP hard, meaning there is not an efficient algorithm for solving it in general. Modern SAT solving programs have been created that can solve SAT problems efficiently in most cases, but they can't guarantee solving it quickly. For finding Wordle word sets I used CryptoMini-SAT, an efficient and easy-to-use solver optimized for cryptography problems. So how do we formulate the problem of finding a good 5-word set as a satisfiability problem? There are 3 main ways I came up with. The first is the simplest. We simply have a variable for each word, which is true if that word is included in the 5-word set. We need 3 types of clauses to ensure that a satisfying assignment corresponds to a perfect 5-word set. Firstly, we must distinguish every difficult pair. There is a clause for each difficult pair, containing all variables corresponding to words that can distinguish that pair. In order to ensure that each useful letter appears, we have a clause with all the words that contain that letter. Finally, we need to make sure at most 5 of the variables are true. This requires many clauses and some additional variables but can be done. If we can solve this SAT problem, then we have a perfect 5-word set. So what's the problem? Well, there are hundreds of clauses with thousands of variables each. This is too much for CryptoMini-SAT to handle, so it cannot find a solution quickly. We need a cleverer formulation to solve this problem. This time, let's try to create a satisfiability problem with fewer variables. This time we have a variable for each letter and possible location, for only 130 total. We have the same types of clauses. For difficult pairs, the corresponding clause has the letter placements that are guaranteed to distinguish those words, which are much shorter than the clauses in the previous formulation. The clauses for including each letter are also much shorter. We also need to ensure that we have at most 5 letters in each position. What this gives is not a set of words, but a set of letter placements. This can be broken up into words separately from the satisfiability problem in a fraction of a second. This time, solving the satisfiability problem does not guarantee us a perfect 5-word set, but it is much easier to solve. Unfortunately, there are millions of solutions, and each one is slower to find than the last, so discovering all of them is too slow. To find the perfect 5-word set we need to make a couple modifications. Our problem is the same as last time, except we remove the requirement to include each useful letter, and in addition to requiring at most 5 letters in each position we require at most 17 total letters. The 17 letters placed cover all of the difficult pairs, and the remaining letters needed can be placed anywhere. Now there are far fewer solutions to the satisfiability problem, but more work is required to test all the possible permutations of the missing letters. This trade-off is worth it, and this optimization makes it possible to find the perfect 5-word set: bunt, flock, hummel, porgy, swive. There are several natural extensions to the problem of finding a perfect 5-word set. Several other perfect sets have been discovered much more recently with the same ideas and a more thorough search. For the New York Times word list, similar techniques were used to find the best-known 5-word sets: Flint Spread Chalk Rugby Move, and Crime Snoke Depth Favell Rugby, with 18 ambiguity, and a perfect 6-word set: Shot, Spelk, Bawdy, Vermin, Fugle, Zorro, with the help of Gaster and Blue Red, which is of course useless. The last question is whether a perfect 5-word set is ever practical. For most speedrunning categories, the answer is no, as the extra time taken to type all 5 words outweighs the improvement in being able to recognize words. The only scenario in which it could be practical is in a category where having automatic word inputs is allowed, which was recently added to the official leaderboards.
The perfect set was never searched for with the goal of being practical. We wanted to see what was possible with the game, if we could find any meaning in the chaos of the English language. I think we found something satisfying.